Okay, welcome folks. Right now I'm showing that we have 47 participants this evening, not counting people that are huddled around their computers to be a part of tonight's webinar. Welcome to Breaking the Chain, Principles of Flying Low, Slow, and Off Airport. Pretty unique topic we're going to have tonight, and we'll have a really good time. Let's go ahead and bring up the next slide, Paul. A little quick note at the agenda. Right. Many of you have heard of the WINGS program. What is it? It's basically a program to get credit for participating in various FAA WINGS credited programs that is basically pushed out through the FAA safety team SPANS announcements. And I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. We're going to cover a little introduction of myself, my co-presenter tonight, Paul, and also our special guest speaker tonight, Trace Clinton. We'll talk about what the mission statement, the end state of my program, this program is. And then, of course, we'll have the main presentation this evening. If you could back up, Paul. Back up one slide. Okay, thank you. We'll have an open forum, questions and answer session, and then we'll close out with our closing comments. All right, next slide, Paul. So many of you have seen and heard about the WINGS program. There's a hyperlink there. Copy it down. Drop in that FAAsafety.gov into your web browser, and it'll bring you to the FAA web page, and you can log in and become part of the WINGS program. And the real awesome thing about this program, more so than getting WINGS credit, which is really good, is you get notifications of events such as this, whether it be webinars or live seminars. So check that out and get smart on the WINGS credit program, and you can get assigned your WINGS credit. Now, for those of you who are attending tonight, what I need you to do is I need an email from you after completion of this presentation so that I can validate that you are all here and present. And I will give you a code at the end of the presentation to include in that email to send to me so that I can validate that you were present. So stay tuned for the whole presentation, and you'll be able to get assigned WINGS credit. All right, next slide. Next slide, Paul, can you? Paul?
Yeah, it's up there. It's on your bio right now.
Sounds good. Yeah, my internet just dropped apparently. That's it. Okay, so my name is Jeremy Walters. I'm a professional pilot. I fly professionally for a charter outfit in South New Braunfels area, and I'm a Gold Seal flight instructor, which is where my true passion is. I really love teaching, love being a mentor. I'm a major in the United States Army Reserves. I flew the 864 Apache helicopter, float plane instructor, and I also have a little YouTube channel called All American Aviation, and it's dedicated to promoting aviation safety, the passion of aviation, and pursuing something bigger and better than yourself. All right, that's who I am and what I'm about, and this program is part of that All American Aviation. The Breaking the Chain program is part of the All American Aviation mission. Tonight, next slide. Tonight we have an assistant by the name of Mr. Paul Nadeau. Paul has attended some of my live seminars in the past. He is a sophomore software consultant and coordinator with VMware. He's an instrument-rated private pilot, and he also helps participate in Angel Flight programs, which is really awesome. Tonight, our guest speaker is Mr. Trace Clinton. Are you on that slide, Paul? I can't see it.
Yeah, we are now. Go for it.
All right. Trace is a flight instructor, commercial pilot, and is also the owner and operator of C3 Air. All right, next slide. So what is breaking the chain? Breaking the chain is a program where we start out with a flight and we wind up having a bad situation happen. Next slide. We wind up having a crash, right? And in between the beginning of the flight to the crash, there's a series of links that is often called the human error chain. And if you can break one of the links in the human factor error chain, next slide, the goal, which is what we're trying to accomplish here, the crash doesn't happen. Next. So what is our mission? Next slide. The mission of the Breaking the Chain program is to influence the aviation community to apply lessons learned to the future, to enable a safety-minded culture to protect our fellow pilots, aviation as a whole, and setting an example for those around us. The end state is to carry away a breaking the chain mindset for future operations, not limited to just aviation, but in our daily lives to mitigate the risk of an incident. That can lead to damage, property, injury, or loss of life. Now, how this is applicable to tonight's discussion, which is a little bit of an unusual discussion, principles of flying low, slow, and off airport. There's an area of aviation where there's flying agriculturally or in the bush, flying power lines, flying highway patrol, or just taking a sky lane to go fly off airport. That is a significant part of general aviation. And there are those out there that participate in this activity. And it's a wonderful activity to participate in, as long as you do it safely. You know, as a helicopter pilot, we operate below 500 feet on a regular basis. So it can be done safely with education and with training. So that brings me to my next slide. How do we execute breaking the chain? By training and by thinking like a professional aviator. Now I'll go ahead and say one more slide. What a professional aviator is, essentially, is a person that does the right thing when no one is watching and is constantly seeking improvement. And one of the ways that we can do that is by promoting that safety-minded culture. So the way we're going to do that is by having a webinar about it. With that being said, Trace, you have the flight controls.
I got the flight controls. Thank you, Jeremy.
You had the flight controls.
Okay, let's see how I share my screen.
Hold on 1 second. Let me get you over there to making you the host. All right, go for it. You should be able to share your screen now.
Let's see. Okay, there's the more. All right, coming up. Is it up?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. No, yeah, thank you, Jeremy, very much. So, hello, and thank you, everyone, for tuning in tonight. It's kind of neat. You got Paul in the space station. I'm just sitting here in the office, and hopefully y'all are comfortable at the house as well. So low and slow and off airport is the type of flying that I really enjoy doing. I think it's completely different than instrument flying or flying high and fast and getting somewhere. It's just a completely different aspect of flying. But it is inherently more dangerous than flying high and fast, away from the obstructions, away from obstacles. But let's just kind of go over a few things of how to mitigate, how to understand, and kind of what we're doing with everything. First off, FAA disclaimer, Ryan would not promote me to any FAA inspector, and so I'm just a FAST team member, and what that is, we just help spread the safety, spread the word around about doing the right thing. And so I don't have any authority or any final say, any discrepancy of the presented information. So there you go. And then a few FARs kind of pertaining to what we're discussing tonight. 91-119 that I'm sure many of y'all are aware of, the minimum safe altitudes. Look at letter C, over other than congested areas. 500 feet is the minimum altitude over any person, vehicle, vessel, or structure. But over sparsely populated, open areas, open water, open land, there's no rule against it. Now there's also 91-13 that we cannot be careless as pilots or reckless. And of course, we never want to endanger anyone on the ground. So that being said, keep that in the back of your mind as we kind of go through some of this. And you know what? Why is flying low such a taboo in aviation? And you got so many different people that do it. I mean, if you think about it, aviation, the history of aviation started as flying low. The Wright brothers, their first flight, I think they got an altitude of 12 feet. So they were the first ones to ever be the low flyers. Now we got Red Bull, we got Blue Angels, we got Reno, and we watch those and we just think they're so cool. We remember Bob Hoover and Charles Lindbergh always as low flyers. Then you got professional pilots like military pilots and ag pilots like Jeremy mentioned that fly low. And you even got some pilots that will take airliners with fire retardant, fly through the mountains in low visibility, just right off the deck to put off fires. And then I even put our national icon there, the Eagle flying low. Everybody likes flying low. Can it be done safe? Is it safe? You got one guy on the top left trying to fly, I guess, and you got the guy on the bottom in the wingsuit also trying to fly. Maybe they think it's safe. I don't know. But it's a matter of perspective. I'm not sure which one I'd want to do there. If I'd want to take a concrete into the chin, or if I'd want to jump off a mountain and go through a little canyon in a wingsuit and land safely at the other end. It's all a matter of perspective. And to really understand this, we need to understand kind of who you are. What kind of risk do you accept? Are you a risk taker or a risk avoider? And there's really two different categories of people, and that's perfectly okay. Everyone is different, and it takes everyone for the world to go around. But the main thing that we want to go into this is we need to understand the risk, understanding the threats before we go and do this. If we blindly just go fly low without knowing what is actually at stake, that's where we're very dangerous. And we're more of a passenger at that point. We're not a pilot. So let's kind of identify some of the threats that could be potential issues. Each one of these that I listed here could be a presentation in itself. Pretty big topic. So we're going to kind of touch on each one of them. I put the cup of coffee in there because to me, that's not a threat at all. But I guarantee you there's one person in the United States that that's a big threat to. And so it's again, a matter of perspective on how we approach this. How do we mitigate the risk? That's one way to do it. That may not be the only way to do it. I don't have one of those suits, but maybe, I bet my kids, you know, by the time they're old, they'll probably have to, that will be a requirement to have one of those suits for sure. Okay, let's talk about the first topic, CFIT, controlled flight into terrain. That still is the top 3 causes for fatal accidents in general aviation and aviation. It's still a problem. You would think with the technology, the training, just the information out there that this would not be an issue. So what are some of the things that go into this? Is poor visibility definitely is a contribution to CFIT, and that would be in a scud running type of scenario. That is not what low flying is about. That's a huge no-no. No scud running, no low flying, and poor visibility. Distractions, we're going to talk more about that in a little bit, but when you're flying low, as you know, you can't look down, you can't grab things, you can't reach behind you like you could at 8,000 feet. You can't be distracted, you have to be focused. Changing terrain, not only is it that the terrain is changing and that, you know, you got some mountains and canyons possibly, but typically when you're in that environment, your density altitude is a lot higher and your performance suffers. And you may not be used to flying your airplane in that type of environment. So that's something that you need to pay attention to. And then of course, flying low with turbulence and wind, it's just miserable. It prevents you from accurately flying the airplane, and it could lead to you know, getting injured. A friend of mine actually was flying in the mountains and didn't have a helmet on, and we'll talk more about that here in a bit. And he got in some turbulence because he was down low, and he actually hit his head on the. He was wearing a helmet, thankfully. He hit his head on the bars across the cockpit here, and it really did some spinal damage. He was able to land and be safe, but he, I believe, had to have surgery, and it was a big deal. So we're going to talk more about environment here in a little bit. Real quick, CFIT, in 2016, 66 accidents in that year. People were piloted themselves in a perfectly good airplane into the terrain. 41 of those were fatal. 60% of the CFIT accidents occur on the approach and landing phase. We're going to discuss that more too. Okay. One thing that can help with you know, combating CFIT is canyon turns or 180-degree course reversal. You know, if you're going to be flying low, this is something that you want to know how to do. I'm going to talk more about concepts, and I would encourage you, if this is something you want to do, to go find out the individual or the CFI that really specializes canyon turns in your type of airplane, and go practice it and take a course in the mountainous areas. But basically, if you think about it, we want to do a 180-degree course reversal, and we're in a confined space. So speed is not our friend, and rate of turn or radius of turn is not our friend. So anytime we are able to slow down the airplane, whether it's adding altitude, deploying flaps, that will shrink our radius significantly on that turn. In addition, anytime that we're able to increase our bank angle, that will also shrink our radius of turn. But the kicker is, as we increase our bank angle, our stall speed goes up, right? Because of load factor. So that's something that's where the training goes in, and you need to really finesse that. You know, you can go out and practice and find a big open field and get 2,000 feet above it and just see if you can stay in the field and look at the boundaries on the fence line and just practice and see what your airplane can do. But it's a combination of slowing the airplane down, deploying some flaps, adding some bank angle, whether it's 30, 45, or even more. It kind of depends on the situation. Just know, again, the tighter the turn, the stall speed increases. So I don't want to get too technical on the canyon turn, but that is a great tool in your kit to have just in case you need to pull that out. All right. Wires and obstacles. This is one of the biggest threats that I've experienced, in my opinion. Worst, about 75 accidents per year are airplanes striking wires. A huge way to combat this is reconning the area, flying up higher in the safe zone and looking really good. Down if you're going to fly a river or just some hills or whatever it may be, reconning the area really well will save your butt so many times. Unfortunately, I've had bad experience with this. No accidents, thank God. But one beautiful morning flight in an airplane, I was going up the Colorado River, and there's nothing on the sectional to identify this, but there's wires that go from peak to peak, and I was below the rim, and so I just committed to going under them, but it was completely unplanned. And that's one of those experiences that you're thankful for because it really makes an impact in your life, and everyone walked away just fine. But it was a really stupid and poor decision of not reconning that area. So that's huge. Reconning the area is extremely important. A clean windscreen. You can kind of get away with it with all the bugs and everything going up high. But when you're down low, you want to have great visibility. And one thing that will go into that is always cleaning the windshield. Of course, flying low, you get a lot more bugs and dirt on the windshield, but just try to keep it clean. That should be a good part of your pre-flight. As far as wires go, and just being situationally aware, is looking left and right. Not just getting tunnel vision and looking straight ahead, but really looking around. Typically around wires, you can see a straight line of either fence or trees, or you can see the poles kind of leading in. And you just want to really be prepared and looking around and making sure you understand where you're at. Just like you treat every gun as it's loaded, you should treat every valley as it has wires. This picture on the bottom right here is in Moab. I've flown that canyon. I was not aware of that slackline obstacle course. I went back and looked, and it's actually in that finger of the canyon is in a restricted area, thankfully. So maybe that's why it wasn't marked. But nonetheless, those things exist, and you need to be aware that that's not just a power line, that's a whole spider web of wires and people on them. If you do cross a high voltage power line, it's best to go over the poles. Occasionally you'll have a upslope area, and that there will be a pole on one side that's low, and then the wire will actually go above the pole upslope to the next pole over here. So if you think, well, I'll stay to the left of the pole and above, you could be flying right into the wire. So always cross over the pole just to ensure that you safely go across. Some things about wires. Those balls are only 3 feet. And 3 feet may sound fairly large, but if you're going 90 knots, your close rate is 150 feet per second. So call it 4 seconds. That's probably when the balls come into view. So you really need to be eyes outside and recon the area really well. Those balls are not required on all wires. I believe it's anything above 50 feet. has to have balls on it. But again, I will say they're not on every power line for sure. Another thing to note is not everything below 200 feet has to be on the sectional. So it won't always be shown if you're just reconning on the map before you go. You need to fly the route and get eyes on the route. I'm not too sure of the story on the top left, but I mean, I think it's pretty obvious, but the bottom one, I believe he was flying, or she, I don't know, flying a canyon and saw wires at the last minute and pushed forward. They were on the landing phase, I believe, but ended up, not being able to land and flipped over. So it's just something that we don't want to go there. Let's see. So loss of control is still the #1 cause of fatal accidents. One fatal accident every 4 days. It really does amaze me on how many loss of control issues that we have. Now, when we fly low, of course, we're going to be more exposed to loss of control because we have less reaction time. So that's something you need to think about. Before we do fly low, you really need to understand your airplane, how the controls feel, what the stall feels like in all regimes. You should go up at altitude, go high enough to where you feel comfortable, and really just get comfortable with your airplane. Stall it, feel what it is. If you're super apprehensive to stalls, that's fine. Just go get the experience. Go train with the instructor, but really understand what your airplane, where those limits are. It's not just an airspeed on the indicator. You have to really know and feel that airplane, or if you have an angle of attack indicator, those are fantastic to help with this. But train, fly your airplane, understand its limitations, and we got to stop the loss of control. Let's go. Another thing to help combat loss of control. If you have not read this book, I read it as a CFI, unfortunately, and not as a private pilot. And it's, I believe, like 1938 knowledge. It's nothing new. And it really does a great explanation of just flying the airplane. It's more for just the pilot in general. It's not targeted for flying, low and slow, or the jet, or I guess there weren't many jets around back then, but it's just basic stick and rudder, basic understanding of flying your airplane. And it's I would highly recommend if you haven't done it. They're $20 on Amazon. It'd be the best training you can get. Another one of our threats that we have to think about are cockpit distractions. When we're flying down low, eyes have to be outside. Our eyes have to be outside, so we have to be prepared to have everything accomplished before then. If you're planning on taking a drink of water or something, or getting batteries out of the back, or charging or plugging in your iPad, the time to do that is not down low. The time to do that is when you're up high. And if you got to do something like that, you just pull up and go up high again. It's no problem. Cockpit management, kind of going along with what we're talking about. You just need to make sure you know where everything's at and accessible. Cockpit familiarization, a great thing to do if you haven't already. I believe Jeremy probably can attest to this. What they do in the military is they just sit you in the cockpit and you close your eyes and you just start reaching for things. See if you can grab the carb heat, or turn the fuel pump on, or the landing light. Anything that you can just grab without having to look. Anytime we bring our eyes away from flying outside, we're not looking for traffic, we're not looking for birds, we're not looking for obstacles or terrain. Our eyes are inside. The other thing that's really hard, and I battle with this too, is when I'm low, the reason I fly low is because I can see things. And I think it's so cool to fly, over some elk, or fly in a really just a cinematic looking view. And I want to take pictures, but there is a time and place to do that. And best is if you have another passenger That can be their sole job of taking pictures. But it's just like driving. If you're trying to text and take pictures or whatever, that phone can be a really big distraction. Then, of course, any engine management issues that we have, switching tanks, monitoring oil temperatures or cylinder head temperatures. If there's anything kind of, flirting with the red, it's not an obvious issue at that point, but something that I need to pay more attention to something, and one of these gauges or whatever you're trying to monitor, again, just crank up the altitude and go up higher. Not worth trying to do both. You won't be able to enjoy it. You also kind of be worried about, what's going on with my airplane. So just anything that takes your distraction, anything that distracts you from eyes outside, flying the airplane, really focusing, you just need to go up higher, not worry about it. The environment that we fly in, there's always a time and place, and kind of like what we talked about earlier with the visibility or the weather and the wind and everything. There's a time and place to do this. This picture, I was actually over a pass with a nice highway over it, but to the left, you can see it's pretty unforgiving terrain. Is that something you want to go to? Maybe, but you will have, you're going to accept that risk. You're going to have to weigh that, and you need to understand if you did have any issues, there's not many options going that direction. Whereas if you stay over roads or whatever, when you're going in the mountainous areas or unforgivable terrain, then you have a lot more options if things go wrong. The sun and visibility plays a huge role. Sun for sure, that it can be blinding, as you've seen at higher altitudes. But those wires and other obstacles can be invisible with the sun. Wind and turbulence, like we talked about already, can be an issue. Terrain, again, going back to CFIT problems. Visibility, going to scud running or low visibility, that's not something we want to do. And just overall weather, we really want to pick and choose good days to do this. Back to having weather and clouds, we want to have options. If we're going to fly low, we don't want to be restricted to flying low. We want to be able to have an escape route always. We're not being a passenger and just going along for the ride. We have to have options. And again, recon the area, I can't stress that enough. Okay, what? The pilot, you're part of the threat? Oh my gosh, who would have thought? No, as you know, all pilots can make poor aeronautical decision making. And as you may know, some of this comes with these high time pilots. You read accident reports and you'll see these 3,000 or 10,000 or 20,000 hour pilots. So if they can make mistakes, everyone can make mistakes. So we have to be on our game and make good decision making. And we're going to continue on how to do that. External pressures. I've seen 3 little faux pas and one pretty bad accident, and they were all in groups of pilots, and they all happened on the landing phase. I would attribute a lot to the external pressure. You got every airplane stacked up coming into land. They're spaced enough to where one can land and get off safely while the next one's coming in behind, and it's all stacked up. And so you have this, this pressure to get down safely and quickly and get out of the way for your guy behind you. Everyone wants to make a good landing in front of their friends. You just got to keep that in mind. You can always do a go around. You can always say no. You can figure it out and just kind of relieve some of that pressure. Of course, if you're not comfortable flying your airplane, then you shouldn't be flying low. I get the benefit of flying with pilots and doing their flight reviews, and you can tell some are a little apprehensive. But if you only put 20 hours a year on your airplane, that's not enough hours to be proficient flying down in this type of environment. You need to be flying often. You need to have a good sense of what your airplane is doing. Plus, you need to let your airplane prove itself to you and make sure that, it's been a year since you've flown or flown that airplane. You don't want to just go take it on the most dangerous low flying experience ever. You need to kind of let the airplane make sure it's proven before you go. And of course, if you fly often, but an unfamiliar airplane, maybe it's unfamiliar avionics or handling or even where the different switches are, you're going to be searching more, and you're not going to understand it as well. So you need to be really honed in. This poor judgment is due to lack of experience and training. So, of course, flying often, flying your airplane, understanding, gaining that experience will help you become a safer pilot. And any training you can do, even if it's not related, taking a glider course, for instance, or doing a gyro course, anything that can give you some type of experience to aviation will help everything in your tool bag. And then, of course, something that you've probably heard is the hazardous attitudes. I would say the hazardous attitudes that relate to this type of flying are going to be more of like a machoism, invulnerability, or even an anti-authority type of attitude. Those are attitudes you need to be self-aware. And if you sense those, one thing that I like to do is I just go read accident reports. I just try to dump a lot of accident reports and read through them and see the experience level of the pilot and see what happened to the pilot. And that kind of humbles me a little bit more. So if you feel like you're having one of those, that's a great way to counter that. How else can we mitigate the risk? What else can we do? We've kind of talked about some of the threats. Kind of taking it a step further is the gear that you can have. Helmets are becoming more popular. I'm a firm believer in helmets. I think they're a great idea, especially flying down low. It's a game changer in my book. The Garmin InReach or the Spot or any type of the location beacons or personal locating devices, they are awesome. Since you're flying down low, you typically won't get any ATC flight following. You will be below radar contact. So flight following won't help you. Flight plans are okay to use, but it's kind of it's better than nothing, but it doesn't give you a clear picture of where you go down at if you had to make a off-airport landing unplanned. So having one of these Garmin devices or any of these location devices are amazing. You can constantly be in contact. I send my location to my wife and the dealer, or when I'm ferrying airplanes, I'll send it to the dealer, the owner, my wife, and everyone can see where I'm at. You can also send text through that Garmin InReach, and I've had to do that on the ground when I land somewhere and I don't have cell coverage, and I've done it in the air, of course, at a safe altitude, to just give updates of what's going on, how maybe the weather's turning bad and I'm having to divert, just kind of keeping in check with them. It's a great tool and I highly recommend it. Along with some of this, you can get carried away, and again, it kind of goes on to your mission on what you're doing. Here in a little bit, we're going to talk more about off-airport as well. And when you think off-airport, you're kind of isolated. You're not next to the FBO where there's fuel and a mechanic and even tie down. So these are some of the items that sometimes I would take depending on the mission. That top left is an amazing little micro start. It's the size of an external battery. It's probably 2 or 3 iPhones worth of mass. It's very compact and it can jump your battery. And if you land somewhere, no cell coverage, and you're by yourself, if you had a dead battery, that's your only saving grace right there. It doesn't take up any weight, and it's a great way to, a great safety net. You can also use it to charge your phone and iPad as well. A toolkit, you should be familiar enough with your airplane to, what tools are required to work on your airplane to do your preventative maintenance. I would start making a toolkit that's, more custom to your airplane. There's no need to take a carpentry set or anything, The top right is a small tire inflator. These things are great. Again, very, very small. And if you land off airport and you do have some type of issue, you don't want to be, pressured to make a bad decision. And that's really what all this goes into. You just want to be prepared. And if you have an issue, obviously, if you have 2 flat tires in your airplane, it's a no-go. It's easy. But when the tire pressure may be marginal, or maybe this spark plug, could be checked, but or cleaned or whatever, let's just go for it. It's when it's marginal that these tools can really come in handy and make it a better, safer environment. So another thing is I wear a small chest pack on me when I do, this low flying stuff. And you can see that Garmin inReach stays right here. It's very accessible, again, going into cockpit management and having it. It's not in my pocket of my pants where I have to kind of reach in and grab, and it's real tight and in there. One thing you can't see is a seatbelt cutter. It's on the external side of my chest pack there. And it has some first aid things in there, along with very basic survival equipment, just in case. And the idea behind this either survival vest or pack or however, the idea behind wearing it is just like what the military does. If you had to go down and you had to get out of the airplane quickly, really whatever's on you is what you're going to have. It's always great to have more. So sometimes, especially if I take 2 people or another person with me in the Cub, I'll pack a extra sleeping bag, although we have no plan to camp out, just in case we have to stay the night when it's really cold, or I'll pack some water or whatever it may be in the back. You can always pack more. That first aid kit on the bottom, it's nice. Again, that's something you can have, but you may not be able to access it in the event that you crash the airplane. So having something, even basic essentials like that Garmin inReach on you and a lighter, that goes a long way. But you can also kind of put more stuff in it. I'm not able to carry all this stuff in my pack, but for the most part, obviously I don't carry the headset or the iPad, but I'll have my phone in that front pocket, a battery charger, basic fire starting equipment, signaling devices, a small flare, some kind of trauma type of first aid kit, and even some Advil and some bandages and a tourniquet. Just kind of basic, and it all fits nice and neat and tight in there. I don't carry the fuel sump in my chest pack, but I put it out there. Type of airplane. So tailwheel versus tricycle. I'm a tailwheel guy, but you can take many tricycle airplanes into what we're calling off airport. And that's kind of, we're going to talk more about that here in a bit, but off airport doesn't have to be a 250-foot sandbar uphill, around a corner or whatever. It could be a nice grass strip that's 1,800 feet, 2,500 feet long, maybe has some technical things getting into, but it's perfectly fine for a tricycle airplane. Tailwheels are a little harder to steer once you get them landed, but the prop clearance is much better. On this airplane, we're able to put, 31-inch bush wheels on it, and that really helps absorb a lot of the energy if you make a rough landing, or if you're trying to go over some rocks, some bigger types of obstacles that are on the ground. I'm more of a Super Cub or derivative Carbon Cub type of guy, and so the stall speed on these airplanes are amazing. We're just under 30, somewhere in there, and so anytime you can fly an airplane with a low stall speed, that definitely increases your chances of survival. Heaven forbid you have to crash somewhere. As long as you can keep the airplane under control, wings level, and fly it into wherever, your chances of surviving go way up. And if your stall speed is low, it's an exponentially increase of survival rate. Your cruise speed, I fly a twin engine airplane, and I would never fly this type of airplane down in a canyon or down low where it's hard to see in tight turns and everything. It's just not smart. Having a small or a slower airplane really helps with kind of developing that picture in front of you and gives you a lot more time to react going back to that fact I said earlier, 90 knots, you're going 150 foot per second. Every 2 seconds, you're going over a football field, and 90 knots is pretty slow. Landing and takeoff distances. Of course, these airplanes, that's what their bread and butter. They can really take off on a short distance and land in a short distance. So picking your airplane for the type of flying that you're going to do is very critical in what we're talking about here. So again, flying low, you can see the left picture is out in the middle of the Mojave Desert. It's just a long road, very open. I think I was probably 30 miles or so from the last person or structure I saw. I mean, you can get into these really remote areas. Top right's in Salt Lake, and that's a dried up salt bed. And that's just a really pretty cool area to fly down low. Very forgiving as well. And again, that's the same picture we talked about earlier. That could be less forgiving. Is it doable? Sure it is. Is it more risky? Absolutely. That's up for you to decide. More pictures of flying low. You can see that one is back in Salt Lake. I mean, you can really get down and there's nothing out there. The pastures over in northwest Texas, just a bunch of open area. And that one on the right, I believe, is in Idaho. Beautiful state to fly in. Let's go into kind of off-airport operations. And again, we think kind of these extreme backcountry things, but they really don't have to be. They can apply to I'm sure any of your airplanes. Gaston's is a great airstrip that is somewhat technical. It's a one-way in, one-way out, depending on the type of airplane you're flying, and there's a kind of a different approach that you want to take. It's not your standard left pattern, 90, 80, 70 on final, 3 notches of flap type of deal. So I think this can apply to everybody. Again, going back to reconning the area, this is something that is extremely valuable. If it's an area that you're really unfamiliar with, a high orbit is good before we do the low orbit, especially if it's in some type of, you're getting below terrain, you got mountainous areas. You really want to do a high orbit to see if you see any wires spanning across from peak to peak, because the distance between the wires can be 500 feet or even 1,000 feet in some of these areas. Huge wires. So just make sure we do a high orbit. Then once we feel comfortable, we do a low orbit. And we say an orbit because we want to get vantage points from different locations. The sun may be reflecting on this side, and you get a glare off the water, or you get a glare on those wires. But when you come the other side, it becomes in clear view. So make sure we get a 360 of what's going on. As we're up there on that high and low orbit, that's when we're starting to develop our plan. Before we go into the low approach and rolling our strip, but we're looking for wind indicators, go around point, how we're going to make this approach, and how we're going to take off again. Once we land, we can't see the area from the bird's eye view as well. So we're trying to develop this picture all in this area. You'll see YouTube videos of these guys coming in and landing on a dime. If that's not their first time to do it, if it is their first time to do it, for sure, I know they've made several attempts, they've orbited, they've really looked at the area before they make that commitment to landing. Once you're committed and you understand what the environment that you're going to land at, you can do a low approach. Sometimes the bird's eye view isn't as good as more of the profile view when you come down lower. That really shows the terrain that you're landing at. It can really identify a huge bump in the terrain that you're landing, whether it's sand or just grass or gravel, whatever it may be. Then when you're comfortable with that, we're going to roll the strip. You're going to do a low approach and just drag tires and get a good feel for what the kind of terrain is made out of. Is it mushy? Is it muddy? Is it really loose sand? And then, of course, like we talked about, having that go around point is critical. having the discipline to follow the go-around point is even more important. And then practice always hitting your landing zone. If you're landing at AVIA, try to hit one of the stripes. Try to land at a certain spot. It doesn't matter if you're hitting the numbers or the 1,000-foot markers, but try to be accurate every time you land, and that will go to your practicing of landing off airport when the distance is not as long. Wind indicator. So again, at the runway, you got a nice AWOS verbally telling you, maybe even you got ADSB giving you an METAR, but nonetheless, you probably have a windsock also to show you the wind. That's not always true when you're landing off airport, even if it's an airstrip. May not be always true. So try to clue into wind indicators, whether it's looking at dust or smoke on the top right, or looking at the water. You can see that the direction of the wind is kind of a bad picture. I stole that one. You can see the wind approaching from the left to right. It makes the water calm, and then it starts rippling. So wherever the calm water is the upwind side of the direction of the wind. And then if there's no indicator, a nice easy circle if you have a GPS or ForeFlight, and just figure out where your slowest ground speed is. Obviously, it needs to be a level turn at same power setting, just nice, easy clearing turn as well. Now, if we do this at altitude or at our high orbit, especially if we're landing in some type of canyon or just a terrain on both sides, we can get different winds at different levels. So it's really important to really understand where that wind is coming from. Another off-airport considerations, it's you're away from help, you're away from maintenance, and you don't have much weather information. Typically, if you're landing on someone's ranch or a grass strip or even sandbar. So you need to prepare a little bit more than just flying to your favorite airport and landing and spending the night for a couple nights. Cell coverage may not exist. So again, go back to that spot. Fuel availability, once you land, it's great, but then if you don't have any fuel to get out of there to the next stop, that really puts you in a bad situation, especially when it's right on that edge of your personal minimum. So make sure you always, you think of fuel when you go into these places. Go with friends. That's always helps out if you have just even a small mechanical problem. If you need someone to, if you have an issue taking off or landing, a friend will be able to help or take you in their airplane and y'all go fly somewhere else, whatever it may be. It's all, and it's more fun that way too. Again, let's talk about the takeoff. And this webinar isn't, again, to make you a guru of backcountry. It just kind of give you something to think about if this is not the type of flying you normally do. Once we've landed and we've already built that picture of how we're going to take off, how our departure is going to be, before we commit to taking off, we're going to go ahead and walk the area that's available to us, not just the area that we think we're going to use up. We're going to walk the length of the available runway that we have. Occasionally you'll see some obstacles that are buried or really difficult to see when you came into land. So that gives you a chance to really kind of pinpoint and move and clear the area. The 50-70 rule is a great rule that you can take onto a pavement strip, you can take onto anything, and many of you probably heard of it. But basically, what you would do is find the midpoint of your available takeoff area. You can do that by walking the whole length and then, coming back half of it and identifying that midpoint. When it's something like this sandbar where there's no stripes, can't believe they don't put centerline stripes on sandbars or grass strips, but there's nothing to identify the midpoint, you can make it something. You can pull over a log, you can stack some rocks off to the side, you can note a large tree, whatever it may be, just kind of take note of where that midpoint is, because the 50-70 rule says that at 50% of your available takeoff area, you need to be 70% of your rotation speed. So that's something you can go practice on a larger runway or large grass strip and kind of play with that. And at that point, 50%, if you're not at 70% of your airspeed, then it's a no-go. You abort the takeoff. You figure out what happened. Am I dragging a brake? Did I leave my tail in the sand too long? Am I too heavy? Did I put on too much weight on that stop? Maybe I need to clear out more area for me to take off, or maybe I need to get rid of some weight and try it again. Wind versus the terrain. So occasionally, when you went through private pilot training, it's take off into the wind all the time. In this case, you can see for this Cub, you got plenty of room in the picture, but you're taking off in rising terrain. That sandbar follows out to the right, and you may not know that if you didn't do your recon from above real good. But do you always take off into the wind, or do you balance the terrain? It's really an experience thing. Especially in high density altitude areas, your takeoff may be predictable, but the climb out may not as be predictable. And if you're trying to overcome something in front of you, it may have been a better idea to take off with a 5-knot tailwind with no obstacles. A good rule of thumb with judging that on performance charts, if it doesn't have a wind column in there, is for every 2 knots of wind, you can add 10% or increase your distance by 10%. So it doesn't take much wind to increase the distance, but it may be better than climbing over an obstacle. Grass, gravel, or sand are all considerations on how we're going to make this approach. Tricycle gear and sand doesn't typically do well, especially with the small tires. When you get bigger tires and maybe on some firm sand that's kind of damp, that can be doable. That's just something that will take some training, and I wouldn't just go try it and see if it works. Gravel. When you're on gravel, you just want to guard the prop. You want to try to stay away from doing the short field takeoffs, of holding the brakes, revving up your engine, and just sucking up all that gravel into your prop. It's very damaging. That being said, your run-ups, you want to be very, very careful on where you do those. If there's a grassy spot over in an area that may not be on the approach end of the runway, then go do it over there and get a good run-up in. But don't do it over the gravel. And grass typically can be great. We got some great grass strips in the area, the central Texas area. But some of them, especially after rain, they can get soft. So that's just something, again, by walking your whole runway, you can be familiar with the condition of where you're going to take off from. So back to the question, is it safe? It's relative. It really is relative. Flying low and landing off airport is not as safe as flying at altitude and landing on a runway. But it may be safer than some of the other things that you do. The main point that is you need to understand what you're getting into. You need to mitigate as best as you can based on the certain circumstances you're given. And you need to weigh the risk with an educated background. So the takeaways I want you to have is fly the right airplane for the right mission. Are you going to fly a Learjet through the canyon? Well, Bob Hoover may, but it probably isn't the right decision. You need to learn how to fly your airplane. You need to be super comfortable. If you're doing stalls at 8,000 feet and you're apprehensive, go ahead and just work in that experience and fly the airplane. You may even have 1,000 hours, but they're going from A to B, and you don't do a whole lot of handling the airplane. When you fly down low, you're typically more engaged with the flying and turning and manipulating the airplane. It's not an autopilot straight and level, go fast and that's easy. So just make sure that you understand how to fly your airplane. Plan, prepare, and practice are great takeaways. I'll keep saying it. Recon the area super well. Fly with friends. Train and always continue to learn. You'll never have everything mastered. Continue to learn. Continue to do things like this. Train with different people. and that's how we can make a safer pilot. That's how we can enjoy this low flying and just have fun with it. Quick commercial. Recreational Aviation Foundation, they do a great job with preserving, maintaining, and creating airstrips. Their job, you can be a free member or you can donate, and they have a cool airfield guide. And so anytime you're flying across the state, you can go there and you can go land at a private airstrip that's grass, gravel, whatever it may be. And it will give you all the details, just like a ForeFlight would, or AFD, or I guess they're called chart supplementary guides now. But it gives you all the details and the permissions, maybe a contact number to get permission, or no flyers, or you can camp here, you can hike here. It's a great tool. Again, that's theraf.org. Go check them out. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you again for devoting your time and bettering your aviation experience. Who has it now, Paul or Jeremy?
Thanks, Trez. Appreciate it. Yeah, if you stop sharing here, I'm going to put Jeremy's slides back up. He wants to go ahead and close it out.
No, let's go ahead and answer it up to the group. You know, we've got a good 30 minutes so we can have Q&A time for.
Oh, do you? Okay. Okay, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody. If there's any shenanigans going on, you may want to be kind of quick on hitting the mute button or stop the shenanigans. So I'm going to unmute everybody right now so that your mic's going to be hot.
Am I still shared screen, Paul?
You are, yep.
Okay, I need to figure out. We went over this, and I'm not very smart.
I just stopped sharing.
Oh, it's is it under more?
Should be under screen share in the middle.
Oh, there it is. Big red. Okay.
Great. All right, everybody's mic is unmuted, so you can definitely ask questions if you want to.
Hello, I'll go ahead and ask one then. I was asking it in a chat as well. So where can you land off airport?
Where can you learn where to find those airports?
No, where can you land off airport?
Yeah, off airport.
Where can you land off airport? You know, Texas, unfortunately, doesn't have a whole lot of public land. You know, if you're able to develop any relationships with some landowners or some pilots that already have, you know, a strip, those are your best bets. Arkansas, Idaho, there are some great areas up there that are BLM land and state land. I'm really trying to work with the state of Texas and LCRA to kind of open up some land for this type of operation. There's so much open land that this would be super safe to do and very accessible, especially in the Central Texas area.
So you're saying BLM land in general, you can land?
Yeah, I mean, I would go, like Utah has a great Utah Pilots Association, and they have a network of areas that they'll maintain or the RAF helps maintain, and they have them all mapped out, and you can go access them from there. But I would imagine Idaho has a similar type of group, but the RAF is trying to encompass everything to kind of foster that knowledge bank.
Hey, Trace, Ryan Newman here. If I can jump in, where you land an airplane other than normal airfields is not something governed by the FAA, right?
Wow.
You can land darn near anywhere you want if you have the permission of the owner of the property. Okay, let's say you run out of gas and you glide down and land on a highway. If you didn't hurt the airplane and you're able to get some gas, and the state police come out or the county sheriff comes out or something like that and says, yeah, we'll block off the street, we don't mind if you take off. You've got permission, maybe not from the owner, but from the controlling agency for that piece of pavement, right? So, the same principle applies. If whoever owns or legally controls that property, allows you to operate off of it, you're legal.
That's right.
There's a couple of people that are still not able to unmute. I don't know why. There's some people that can't unmute. But if you want, you can text, you can chat in the box there, and Trez can go ahead and read it if you want. There's a couple people there, I think, that said that they were trying to unmute. I'm trying to unmute them, and it won't unmute them.
Once you send the command to unmute, they also have to click
Okay, so go ahead and there you go.
that process.
Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate it. All right, cool. So on your desktop there, you should be able to go down and hit unmute, and it should allow you to unmute. Jessica's iPad.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Okay. Patrick Horan, you should be able to do the same if you want to ask a question.
Host is not allowed to themselves from Jason Giles.
It says that host isn't allowing me to unmute. That's what's up right now, Paul.
Yeah, so I hit unmute, so you should be good to go.
There must be a setting for the whole thing where once I could unmute you unmuted me, but if I mute myself again, then I'm locked out.
Yeah.
So you do it again. So I bet there's a global setting for the whole meeting where you can.
There is, yeah. We have that safety feature in there. So if I unmute you, so right now everybody should be able to unmute. If you unmute yourself, you're going to be unmuted. If you mute yourself again, you're not going to be able to unmute. So just hit the button once, and you should be good to go.
I'll jump in, Trace. Thank you very much. That was a great presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Actually, it's an area of flying that, we're told to stay away from most of the time, right?
Well, and it is kind of a touchy subject, talking about it. It's very taboo.
I'm curious, when you're actually flying low and slow, what are you sort of listening for or feeling? What are you taking in to get the information you need from the aircraft to know where you're at when you're getting down low and slow?
Yeah, using all your senses is a great way. I have, and maybe some of y'all have, been able to hear a difference in the engine, and fortunately been able to land and discover that it's just a nut on the exhaust manifold going away from the cylinder that was missing. And so being clued in, going back to really understanding your airplane, knowing it, the sounds, the vibrations, and the feel of the airplane gives you so much insight on kind of your health of your airplane. Anytime you feel something differently, again, gain that altitude, reconfigure, figure out what's going on, and then carry on from there. Yeah, good point.
Thank you.
Hey, Trace, Levi here. You
Hey.
want to talk about sandbars and big sandy type things and how that works?
Yeah, so in Texas, it's kind of an interesting deal. Sandbars in Texas right now, the state has said a waterway is navigable when the sand or the waterway is more than 30 feet. It defines the waterway not in the stream, but from bank to bank. So anything below the bank is public easement. Now here's where it gets tricky. So you can take a canoe and get off and take a break on the side as long as you're not on the official bank, but on the rocks or the sandbar in the stream. You can even camp. You can take a horse. But the way that it's written, it says no wheeled vehicles on there. There's somewhat of a debate going on what is the definition of a wheeled vehicle. Is that an aircraft without a drivetrain to the wheel? It's not a powered wheel. because then you start thinking, well, airboats, helicopters with skids are all legal to go do these things, but a four-wheeler technically is not allowed. This rule came about that wheeled, I think it's powered wheeled vehicles came about back in 2008 when we had a really big drought in Texas, and there were just a lot of people that had kind of free range of all these waterways and driving up all hours of the night and really impacting the environment and being a nuisance to the neighbors. And so really when I go about this, you never want to be a nuisance to anyone, but you're not impacting the environment. And there's been this debate that on is it a powered wheel vehicle or is it an aircraft with wheels? So that's, again, part of the RAF job is to kind of identify that and clarify it. So.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. Stay safe.
Yeah, let's go do it again.
Chris
Hey,
is,
Trace, go ahead. Go ahead, Paul. You got it.
Chris McCrank, it shows that you're unmuted. I see you, your video's working.
Hey, Chris.
No, it really doesn't work. Okay, it's showing that it must be something wrong with the audio on your device, because it shows that you're unmuted right now, but it's not showing any audio coming across. If you have a question, feel free to type it and we can go ahead and translate it over to Triz for you if you want.
Chris, you might be able to unmute on your screen if you give it a shot. I see an icon that shows that you've got a slash through your microphone. So you may be able to manually unmute from your end if you want to give it a shot. Otherwise, I can ask the question for you.
Michael Altman having a problem too?
All right, for Trace from Chris McCrank, he wanted to ask a very good question. This falls more along the lines of the risk mitigation stuff. How do you set personal minimums for off-airport landings is what Chris asked.
Yeah, you get to that area that you're unknown. You don't have a good wind indicator telling you it's, your crosswind is over 12 knots that you've put on your personal minimums. You don't have the distance. You don't have the capability to know the distance of the area sometimes that you're landing. So how do you do all that? It's really being uncommitting, having that go around point and always being willing to do a go around and just giving it, if you think you can make it based on your experience level, based on what you've done before, then go for it, but always be uncommitting and feel free to always go around. One thing you can do is you can start on a larger grass field and kind of put these parameters in place. So if it's working on takeoff distance or landing distance, putting in cones and to really try to learn to visualize the distances that you see just based on there. The other thing that I forgot to mention is once you've already landed, now you can step out what your takeoff area is. So I know that for me, 61 left paces, so just counting my left foot is 100 meters. And so I know that in the plane that I fly with full fuel, no wind, and a 3,000 foot density altitude, with me, I need about 55 left foots to comfortably take off. So that would be something that when you go into personal minimums, going and practicing that and developing that knowledge base. But you're right, it's a lot more challenging because you don't have as much data.
Jason Giles has a question in there as well. Are there different landing techniques moreover than your standard normal, short, or soft? Different use of the control setup, etc.
Yeah, there's so many different, thoughts on, are you landing a bonanza in a nice, green grass field, or are you landing a Super Cup in a real confined area? And so, yes, there are different techniques that you need to do. And a tail wheel, it's kind of balancing the prop clearance with running the tail over unforgiving terrain. In the sand, if you do a wheel landing, that sand can be really draggy on those main wheels and cause you to go nose forward a little bit. But if you land with a tail low without the tail wheel touching the sand, then you don't have as much rudder authority on your landing. If you plant the tail in the ground in the sand, it's fine. It acts like an anchor and really helps to stop. But occasionally you may not want to do that on a big gravel bar. So yes, through different types of terrain and surface conditions, depends on the type of landing. Mud's another good one. Anything that can grab your tires, you don't want to be up too high to where it can kind of force you to go to nose low and do a prop strike.
Okay, another question from Patrick Horan. If a person like myself, and actually I'm going to say myself as well, have never landed off airport, how do you get started? How do you do your first landings?
Well, you know, it is kind of depending on what kind of airplane you have. You want to start by just being very accurate with putting your airplane on pavement or on a nice grass field in the position that you want. Going with an instructor is highly recommended to get their expertise. There's some great places in Idaho to do this. There's good places here in Central Texas to do it. But yeah, start with if you're going to do your airplane, start with just learning how to land your airplane within a plane length or 2 plane lengths or 30 feet or whatever it may be, just to start understanding how your airplane performs and being accurate. Then once you get that, then taking it to a off airport condition, even if it's a nice, easy, open coastal field, is tons of fun.
Okay. From Josh Rayford, is there any good guidance for the tire size configuration when it comes to soft surfaces like sandbars or riverbeds?
The bigger, the better.
What's that?
The better.
Nice. Softer the better.
Sand is probably the one part, the unique thing that you can land on the sand on 26-inch tires on a Cub, but that would be probably the smallest I would want to go on some loose sand. But it depends on so much with what type of airplane you have, the type of sand that you're landing on. Is it more of a beach setting where it's compacted, or is it very loose? You know, the bigger tires, the 31-inch tires, really help you have a good prop clearance and roll over any rocks that are, you know, softball size or whatever that may damage, you know, 850s or so. So.
Okay. That's pretty much from all the questions that I see down there in the chat. Jeremy, do you have anything else, or anybody else have anything else for Jeremy or for Tris?
Let's see. I see one more here. Try to make sure. All right. One of the questions that Pat asked was also unlike grass fields, how is a landing on a sandbar or a beach different?
It can be extremely different. You know, a good grass strip can be not terribly too much different than landing on pavement. If you've never landed on grass, it's very doable in so many airplanes. Sunrise Beach has a great airstrip. You just need to watch for the deer. Llano, of course, has a great, awesome grass field to go practice on. I would take an airplane that's retractable to Llano and land on grass. I'd even put one probably on wheel pants. Now, if you break your wheel pants, it's not my fault, but it's very smooth. It's a granite gravel base. Landing on sand can be a game changer. It's a whole nother set of skills. You know, especially the beach is typically sloped and you'll have a breeze from one side. So it presents a crosswind issue. And depending on what time of day, the breeze could be on the adverse side, the wing high side. So beach landings, you probably want to get the training on those. Sandbar landings, if it's a nice flat sandbar that's packed, it feels just like pavement. If it's loose, it's completely different. It's very, it can be very unforgiving by grabbing your tires, even taxing and everything. It's almost like having a little bit of brake on your wheel. So you just want to be extremely careful if you're landing on sand.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Jason Giles, have you cub skied before? And I got a great story with this one since Ken's online.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, so me and another pilot I won't disclose, we ran the Ken's airplane tires on the water, and when we got back, I told Ken, I said, you know, hey, we went and skied the tires. It was awesome. And he goes, you know how you do that, right? And I was thinking, you know, he has a mustache and he has some gray hair to give him experience. And I was thinking I was going to get more insight on how to do this safely and fun. And he goes, in someone else's airplane. And so from then on, no more skiing. So it's one of those things that, you know, Trent Palmer has a great video on skiing your cubs and interacting with FA with that, you know, risk and that careless 9113. So that's a great video that kind of explains some of that.
Awesome. Jeremy, you want me to put up the last slide you had?
Maybe we got time for maybe one more question. We'll close it out with one more question.
Okay.
I guess Jessica was asking, do you have any special maintenance for your tail wheel? And I guess you could also add to that. Do you have any special maintenance when you are landing on sand?
Yeah, you know, the wheels, it's a pretty big investment to get those wheels, and so you want to take good care of them. I believe every 100 hours it's wise to rotate them so they don't start wearing on a certain side. You can also just minimize taxing on pavement, turning. You know, you don't want to grind a wheel in place, kind of keep both of them rolling. As far as any maintenance items, just proper inflation of a whole 8 to 12 PSI. They're really malleable. And then there's a pivot point on the back of the Cub on the elevator that has a grease cert or some of them just have a hole that you can spray some type of penetrant in there, like a WD-40 or something that can keep that area lubed for the trim in the elevator. That's since you're landing on sand and dust and dirt, you know, that your tail will get a little bit dirtier than normal landing on pavement. So that's a consideration, you know, every oil change to kind of make sure that's all greased up and lubricated back there.
All right, Trace, thank you very much. Paul, go ahead and throw up my closing comment slide, which is slide 11.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Trace. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, if anybody's unmuted, if you can give Trace a big round of applause one way or the other, that'd be pretty great.
Thank you, Jeremy, and everyone showing up tonight. Very much appreciated.
Thank you for hosting it.
And and I still have bad internet, so I'm talking through an iPhone and having Paul do the slide deck for me, which is, you know, we're making it happen. But Trace, I just wanted to tell you how much I really appreciate your outstanding presentation tonight, devoting your time to this and bringing your subject matter expertise to the plate. For all of you guys who have been participating from day zero, I thank you. For all of you who want to participate in future webinars, make sure that you get on my email distro, and also make sure that you send an email to wingspro@gmail.com and send me the code 2992 so that I can give you wings credit tonight. Again, I know who was registered, and I can match up the emails with that. Help support me by in my mission by subscribing to the All American Aviation channel, which is on YouTube, and that's where this presentation is going to be uploaded. And then 2 weeks from tonight, we're going to have a presentation on human factors and aircraft systems, and I'm actually going to be the presenter for that evening. We're going to analyze a couple of accidents that I have firsthand experience and knowledge on, and we're going to talk about 4 human factor flaws that is usually accompanied with almost all aviation accidents. Again, thank everybody for being with us tonight. And in the words of our individual who asked about water skiing, if anybody wants to water ski an airplane, go to the next slide. Get a float plane. All right, everyone. I really appreciate your participation again. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
All right, Trace. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you,
Thanks,
Trace
everybody.
and Paul.